again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Hey there, welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode. In this episode, we have the author of the book, Caregiving Reimagined, a practical and spiritual guide for family caregivers. This author is Dr. Claudia Cassidy Bennett. She is a seasoned occupational therapist with over 40 years of experience in supporting caregivers. Throughout her career, she has dedicated herself to helping those who care for loved ones, providing guidance, resources, and compassion. Hi, Dr. Bennett. How are you today?
I'm great, Emma. Thank you so much for having me
Yeah,
here.
thank you for being here. So you published your book this year within the past couple months, right?
Right.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So my book is written to support a family caregiver, which is so different than a professional caregiver
Mm-hmm.
because of the emotional quality of caring for a family member. So the book is really divided into three parts equally, and it's meant to be uplifting. It's meant to support caregivers and let them know that they're not alone. And yes, this is really difficult what they've taken on, but that there are tools that can help them. So I was my mother's caregiver. She suffered with Alzheimer's for 11 years. And at the time she was diagnosed, I had been an occupational therapist for 25 years and thought I was going to be the best caregiver in the world because I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I faltered.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it wasn't that I didn't know how to help her dress or bathe or
Yeah.
help her get onto the toilet efficiently and without hurting her or myself. It was that suddenly I was crossing a boundary that I hadn't prepared myself for. And I remember the first time I took her, helped her into a public restroom, and she needed some help pulling her pants down and gently easing herself onto the toilet. And I was trying to make it light and like, oh, mom, we can do this but I knew she felt awkward and I
Yeah.
felt awkward. And so I helped her and I was kind of tripping over my own feet by trying to make it easy. And then I set it there and I walked outside of the stall and I waited and I didn't hear anything for a while. And I said, Mom, are you okay? And she said, oh, phooey. And I was like, okay, I better get in there. And she couldn't get the toilet paper roll was just unspooling on its own. And
Mm-hmm.
we suddenly had this big pile of toilet paper on the floor, and we just looked at each other and burst out laughing. And
Oh.
it helped set the tone, help us at ease.
Mm-hmm.
And I also realized that I was glad that I was there for that moment because had I shied away from caregiving or helping her, it would have been someone else with her.
Right, yeah.
And so I just learned that I needed to dive in. And yes, it was going to be uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
it was uncomfortable for her too. And I think that's something that's really important to know is that we have to think about what's at stake for our care recipient. Like, what are
Mm-hmm.
they going through? But not at the cost of knowing what's at stake in this situation for ourselves either as caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I bet in those little moments, just going to the bathroom, that also is quality time with your mom, even though it's a weird and awkward, thing.
yes.
But, it's also, I'm sure, bonding that a lot of, caregivers that aren't family can't experience, like you mentioned.
Right, right. Because you have that history with that person also.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you bring all of that to the relationship, but all of a sudden the relationship is shifting. And because of my mother's diagnosis, I knew that we had a limited amount of time left as well. So
Oh.
that gave me a sense of urgency to be there. And I know that she felt it too, that she wanted to make those years that she was capable of doing things meaningful and as full as she could make them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, what inspired you to write your book, Caregiving Reimagined, and how did your experience caring for your mom shape the heart of this book?
Okay. So my experience really shaped the entire book.
Mhm.
I realized that a caregiver's journey is very similar to the hero's journey, which you're probably familiar
Mhm.
with going through all the different trials and tribulations and then coming out and, have to meet your foe and conquer your whatever, and the stages of grief,
Mhm.
because you definitely are sometimes in denial, sometimes angry, and together that's the caregiver's journey. So
Mhm.
while I was caring for my mother, I had a really interesting event happen. I took her to her doctor's appointment, and I was kind of, to be fair, she was walking with a walker at that point. I was trying to kind of push her along a little bit so we could get out to the car and I could take her home and then I could get home. And
Mhm.
so I had her sitting in the lobby of the doctor's office building. And then I went to get the car because it was cold and I wanted to heat it up for her. And when I came back in, she was sitting on a couch with an elderly woman and they were laughing and they were holding hands and she looked so happy. And I thought, I can't push her along. And so I sat in the chair across from them. I had turned my car off and locked it. I was able to get the front parking space, so she wouldn't have far to go. And so I sat there, and my mom said, Claudia, I want to introduce you to Sister Annette Boyle. She was one of the Catholic nuns at the convent where my grandfather used to work. And so they were having a really nice conversation. Then I had a conversation with Sister Annette. And then I'm going to make it really short. My mother and I volunteered at the convent for a while because my mother's doctor said, she needs to stay social. And so we went and volunteered and visited with the sisters who were in the nursing home part of the convent. And my mother and I enjoyed it. We had such a great experience doing that and hearing their stories. Well,
Mhm.
later on, I continued volunteering there. And then I ended up doing an oral history project with the nuns, and learning about their journey of getting to the convent and then all that they did while they were there. And they started talking about faith. And I realized that learning about faith and thinking about my own faith in this situation really enhanced my experience of caregiving just
Mhm.
as much as my professional expertise did.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
It really taught me to think about who I am and who I want to be in that moment. For instance, my mother didn't find out that she had Alzheimer's from the doctor. She found out from me on a phone call 2 days later. The doctor hadn't told her, so my siblings and I thought, well, maybe you're not supposed to tell someone with Alzheimer's. Now, remember, this was, what, 15 years ago, so things have changed.
Mhm.
But so we didn't tell her. We just thought we're just going to be positive and just, keep going. And the doctor put her on some new medication. So we were hoping we'd see some improvement with her memory and things with that medication. So
Mhm.
2 days later, I called her. She was watching Jeopardy. And during that time, she said, Do I have Alzheimer's?
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, you're home all alone and you're going to find this out. So I didn't know what to do. I thought, oh, my siblings are
Yeah,
going to
that's
be mad at
tough.
me if I tell her. Is this going to be detrimental to her? What should I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
And I was sitting in my car in a parking lot at the time. And I said, well, Mom, we need to wait and see. Just keep taking your new medication. And we're going to go see the doctor again in 3 months. And she was adamant. She kept saying, do I have Alzheimer's? And in that moment, I had to decide who I was going to be on
Mhm.
this journey. Am I going to respect her she's a woman, a grown woman, and she deserved respect?
Mhm.
Or am I going to cower away from it and not?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, Mom, you have Alzheimer's. I'm so sorry, but to tell you this way, but you do. And she accepted it, and I don't know what she did in the privacy. She may have cried or whatever. But what I'm saying for caregivers is that it's really important to know who you want to be in this
Hmm.
journey, because that, I believe, set the tone for my mother and my new relationship, because then I felt like she trusted me with things. And
Yeah.
she talked to me about how she felt about this diagnosis and what she was noticing in her life as far as the changes. And
Mhm.
so in my book, I talk about a spiritual practice as well and guide caregivers with introspective questions of thinking about who they're going to be and what kind of situations might come up. And
Mhm.
you have to make some split decisions. You don't
Mhm.
have a lot of time to ponder, even as they go along. And doctors or will say, I could put her on this kind of medication. It may make her less agitated, but it'll also make her groggy and maybe not as coherent. And they're going to say, what do you want to do? And you
Mhm.
have to be ready for those questions and know what you want to do. So so the book is divided, as I was saying, with talking about my experience, and hopefully caregivers will see themselves in my experience. And then some practical tips of like I said, how to feed someone. We're not used to feeding an adult. You're not going to feed an adult like you're feeding a baby and doing choo-choos or whatever. But
Mhm.
you need to know how to do it so they don't choke, and how to position their bodies too. And then also dressing them. What order do you do a dressing? And what if they can't stand? How do you dress somebody? How do you put their pants on? How to help someone in and out of a bathtub without hurting your own back, and
Mhm.
and it's all slippery, and making sure there's no accidents. And again, toileting is a big thing, and it's a boundary that is very difficult for caregivers to cross, because bodily fluids scare us all, and it's just not pleasant, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. So there's a practical advice, my experience, and then there's the spiritual guide as well, doing steps to build your spiritual practice and to feel comfortable and confident in who you are.
Yeah, and well, it seemed like you're from that one situation that you talked about with your mom in the restaurant and, helping her in the toilet, and then you guys ended up laughing and had a
Mhm.
really nice moment. So that uh may conclude like how she was as a person, but I feel like sometimes in situations like with elderly people, especially like relatives and siblings, or not siblings, but like yeah,
Spouses or
adult siblings,
yeah.
yeah, like pride might get in the way, like
Mhm.
like grandparents, wanting to do things, or being like, I can do it, or things like that. Did that ever happen like with your mom, like, and how did you handle situations like that where like pride maybe like you know was challenging in certain situations? Does that make sense?
So my mother was a very humble person, and she made a lot of this easy for my siblings and me.
Oh, good.
Um, but one time she was getting out of her rocker chair, the lazy boy chair, and she was trying to pick up her cane. This was early on. And
Okay.
I wanted to encourage her independence. And the cane handle was just hooked around the leg of the table. I could have easily, in 2 seconds, unhooked it and
Right.
did
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But she kept trying and it got stuck. She kept trying again. And so I was standing there, and rather than watch her to make her feel self-conscious about it, I was pretending to look out the window. And I thought, no, I'm just going to let her do it. Eventually she got it. But she was never one to say, no, at this point, no,
Yeah.
let me do it. But she didn't like um always having her kids help her. She was
Right. Yeah.
so gracious, and grateful. And she always would say when I would take her to a restaurant or take her out, every time I went to visit her, I would take her out, especially once she was in the nursing home, just to give her some time out in the world. And, she would hold my hand and say, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. And it may have just been going to Target for,
Right,
a
yeah.
couple hours, but
Yeah.
we would look at all the makeup and do everything. And she just was so appreciative. My mother's motto was, I'm too blessed to be depressed. So, and
Mhm.
she really lived by it. And she was a great example for me to know, to help me know who I am, because she knew who she was. And even with Alzheimer's, that innate kindness stayed with her. When we were volunteering at the convent, there was an incident where she was alone with one of the sisters, and the sister shared some candy with her, little bite-sized pieces of candy, and the sister was choking on it.
Oh.
And my mother instinctively put her hand out for the sister to spit the candy in her hand. And there was saliva, there was everything. But, it was instinct with my mother to help her. And
Mhm.
and she needed to spit that out, and she spit it all out right in my mother's hand, and my mother, cleaned things up. And I
Oh.
just saw, and I got to witness that. I wasn't in the room. I was standing out in the hallway because I wanted to listen to the conversation they were having
Mhm.
and to watch. And I was kind of off to the side so they couldn't see me. And I just knew in that moment I was so grateful for the
Mhm.
gift that I was getting to see my mom as something other than my mom also. Uh,
Yeah. Oh,
so
she seems so lovely. She
yeah,
seems so
she was.
sweet.
She
Yeah.
was. Now, not always, obviously, when I was growing
Right.
up.
Yeah.
So I do talk about anger and resentment. And there were times when I was caring for my mom, and especially one time, again, toileting, and it was a mess that I
Mhm.
had to clean up. And I thought to myself, why am I the one that has to do this when you didn't do this for me, or you didn't do this for me? And it's amazing how these memories pop up all of a sudden for caregivers.
Mhm.
It's like, where did that come from? I don't remember when I haven't thought about ninth grade in a long time, but one time she really upset me. And that popped up when I was cleaning her. And I thought, I, I don't want to do this. I shouldn't have to do this for me. You should be appreciative that I'm cleaning up.
Mhm.
And and so I do talk in the book that anger is real and resentment is real, and to to try to push those feelings down is not going to do you any
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
And to recognize it. And what I found too is, yeah, the anger was at the surface, but it was hiding more my fear usually. And sometimes though my anger propelled me to take some action that I needed to take on
Mhm.
her behalf. So I don't think anger is a bad um, emotion, or sadness comes up and you you feel guilty because you're grieving the loss of your family member the way they used to be, and you think, well, wait, they're alive, I shouldn't be grieving them. That, you feel guilty about that, but you
Mhm.
can, you're going to grieve all the different iterations, because it's interesting. One period of time, your family member may be, the decline may be such that you miss the previous one. But then when their decline gets even more, you miss the decline, the first decline.
Oh my
So you
gosh.
just keep
Yeah.
going through that. And
Mhm.
so it's a real thing. And
Mhm.
so I encourage caregivers to just feel all those feelings, and not to beat themselves up, because we
Mhm.
all feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of emotions, you talk about profound power of emotions in caregiving. And how can besides just like feeling them, how can caregivers begin to embrace that truth or validation of emotions without, like you mentioned, feeling guilty or overwhelmed?
I encourage caregivers to keep a journal so that they can
Mhm.
write those down, so that they can remember them, and remember even how they sort of integrated those into their life. And I wouldn't say get over them, but get past them maybe and move on. And just look at then, uh, like one time when I was really angry, I knew that I needed to go, and my mother ended up in a skilled care facility, and it was a wonderful facility. But there were times when I needed to advocate on her part.
Hmm.
And I don't like confrontation. I know that about myself. But
Hmm.
my anger, I was able to use that to push me forward to go bring
Right.
this up. And it was for my mother's best interest.
Hmm.
And I knew enough to keep my anger in check so that they didn't
Right.
know. But it gave me energy. And so
Hmm.
I look at the different emotions as what does it bring for me? Sometimes sadness allowed me to just take a break too and just sit and relax and not move forward, not continually doing something, but just to sit with that and think
Yeah.
about why do I feel sad?
Hmm.
And what does that mean about my relationship with my mother? I was very fortunate that we had a nice relationship. I So the sadness allowed me to sit and feel that. We like it when we're happy and when we're, having a good
Yeah.
time, but that's not always what it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
yeah.
And so your title, Caregiving Reimagined, suggests a new way of looking at the caregiving experience. What does reimagining mean to you in this context?
So I feel that caregiving is an opportunity for caregivers to learn about themselves. It's
Mhm.
not just about caring for your family member. It's really one of the best classrooms you're ever going to step into. And
Mhm.
so that's what I don't want it to feel like it's just all drudgery and work and responsibility, that there's a lot of value to it that you can pick up along the way. Oftentimes it's in hindsight that we realize the benefits of an experience. And you will do that also after your caregiving responsibilities are over. But I believe that along the way, you can learn so much about yourself and about your family member that maybe you didn't know before because you're just assuming you have all this time and you just keep going
Yeah.
on. So it's just, I feel that caregiving is just a fabulous opportunity and it's unique. Not everybody gets it,
Yeah.
and you don't know how long you're going to have it for. So to embrace it and enjoy what you have. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean every minute you have to be happy about it. I don't want,
Right. Yeah.
this is not, everything is roses. It's definitely not that.
Mhm. Yeah. What would you say, many caregivers may struggle with burnout, and we mentioned guilt. What are some effective self-care techniques you recommend for staying grounded
Okay.
and still compassionate, in your work?
Right. Well, I think the spiritual practice will help with that. Once you know who you are, you know that you'll know what you need in order to carry out your duties, and you'll know what kind of boundaries you need to make.
Mm.
I do have a chapter in there about self-care, and I'm always very cautious about using the term self-care because the
Okay.
minute a caregiver hears that, they cringe because who has time for that?
Yeah.
But I don't think it has to be some big, large thing. I think that it you can look at maybe self-care is just asking someone else to help you out with something. So I
Mm.
do give some suggestions and some steps and a way to really look at how would you define self-care? And to say that I don't need anything, I think is could be detrimental for people to say
Mhm.
that I don't need any self-care. It doesn't, that's why I say let's define it how you need it. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you're the person who needs to go out for walks every day or exercise, go to the gym every day, but you may be the person who needs a phone call from a friend, just a
Mhm.
5, 10 minute phone call from the friend. Or you want to put the TV on for you and your care recipient and watch a half-hour show just in quiet. Or maybe it's even just have a candle burning so you have that smell. And that may lift up your spirit. So it doesn't have to be something big, but something to remind you that you're important also. And
Mhm.
and your life is just as important during this time. We don't want you to forget about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you became, the parent in this situation. Like, when you're a parent of kids, you have to fill your cup up to give them the best experience or best version of yourself. So it kind of reminds me of the same situation, like roles are reversed in a way.
And that is a great analogy. People talk about it as role reversal, but I do caution people on that because they're not children. So
Right, yeah.
so that's sort of the difficulty. You don't want to humiliate them or
Mhm.
disregard them. They had full lives and
Mhm.
they took care of themselves. They had an intellect. So yeah, you're caring for them like you would, like a parent cares for a child, as far as the responsibilities, feeding, bathing, making sure their needs are met. But
Right.
you also want to respect them as a grown adult and a valued member of your family as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I liked what you said earlier about when your mom was asking if she had Alzheimer's, like point blank. And at first you weren't sure if you wanted to say it. And then she asked again. I love the way that you were like, I wanted to respect her. And I feel like in a lot of instances, for example, like my mom and her mom, my
Mhm.
grandma was like super anxious about a lot of things. And I feel like my mom and her siblings would not tell her
Yeah.
things on purpose, like a lot of things. And like, it was like just their relationship and that's just how it was with them. But I like the way that you respected your mom enough to tell her, certain things and explain things to her, like an adult, like you mentioned.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think though, you have to look at the individual situation. Maybe your
Yeah, that's true.
grandmother, maybe her anxiety would have been too high, and that could have been
Yeah.
harmful to her. It's difficult to make that decision either way. I would
Yeah.
imagine that your mom struggled with that because I'm sure she
Yeah.
respected her
Yeah.
mother, but you do have to weigh it. And I know that caregivers who are caring for a family member with dementia, there's often a lot of juggling around with what the facts are and things because it can
Right.
be very
Yeah. That
upsetting.
specifically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, you have to really assess the situation. And again, there will be times that as a caregiver, you're gonna blow it. You're gonna think,
Yeah.
oh,
Right. You
why
can't
did
get
I say
everything
that?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
And
course.
then, you'll have that situation again. So you'll be able to do it the way that you feel is better the next time. So
Yeah.
don't be so hard on yourself because
Fine.
these situations keep coming up day after
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of time to self-correct.
hmm
Yeah.
You mentioned safety is another big focus of your book. What are a few key safety tips every family caregiver should know?
Well, I think that the caregiver needs to look at their own health and their own body mechanics, especially if they're helping their care recipient in and out of chairs, in and out of bed. How are they moving their body? And do they have full movement themselves? And are they strong enough? If they're not, they need to get some extra help. I, that is the biggest thing that we don't want anybody falling, both the care
Mhm.
recipient and or care partner and the caregiver, and we don't want anyone getting hurt. So always whenever you're doing some activity, you want to put all of the equipment you need within reach. Like if you're helping them into a bathtub, make sure that first of all that there's a rubber mat down and that nobody's going to slip and fall. But
Mhm.
washcloths, shampoos, whatever, so that you don't have to walk away to get anything. Like you're
Mhm.
always present right there. And I sometimes think, depending on the situation, you might always want to keep at least one hand on them, on your care partner, care recipient. And even when they're sitting on the toilet, if they're okay with that, because then you can be there faster if something happens. But yeah, safety is definitely a big thing. And I do talk about body mechanics and where to
Mhm.
position your feet if you're moving someone up and out of a wheelchair over to a toilet, and how to put your arms and things. So
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
yeah, real practical tips. So the thing about the book is you can read it from cover to cover, or you can read sections. You can, keep, if you need to, keep it by in the bathroom. So you can say, wait, now what am I supposed to do with this? Okay, I'm going to stand like this, and I'm going to rotate my body this way, and
Mhm.
things. So
Okay.
so it definitely is a guide also.
Mhm. Okay. And so for those who are new to caregiving and may feel overwhelmed, what's one small but powerful mindset shift that they can make today to bring more calm into the process?
I would say that's a great question, first of all. Well,
Thank
I
you.
would say that just know that it is a process.
Hmm.
And as long as you're keeping your family member safe
Hmm.
and fed and as healthy as they can be right now, you're doing a great job. Anything else, you may say the wrong thing, you may
Hmm.
do the wrong thing. Anything else, you'll learn as you go. This is a process, and it could be a long process. So at first, we all feel like we need to jump in there and do it right because we kind of want to get back to our old life. So we
Hmm.
think if we care give really hard, if we do it perfectly, we're going to get back there. But depending on the diagnosis, you may
Yeah.
not. So just know it's a process, and try not to be so hard on yourself. And you are not the first person to make that mistake. Whatever mistake you think you've made, you're not the first one, and people survive through it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I do talk in the book in the beginning, the practical tips
Hmm.
are about, if you're new to caregiving, things to consider and things to do, and think about how you're going to put this into your life.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
And so when did you start writing your book and how long did it take you to complete it?
Good question. So I always keep a journal, and I kept a journal throughout the 11 years that my mother um, had was alive and
Mhm.
diagnosed. And so I talked to her actually in the beginning. I said, Mom, I think we need to write a book. I think we need to write a book about this because of our unique experience with the nuns.
Mhm.
And it just happened so serendipitously, and it was helpful to her. And
Mhm.
because I am an occupational therapist, I would have never thought about doing that with any of my patients.
Mhm.
And so she liked that idea. She liked the idea of a book. So, but I was busy working and things, but I kept the journal, and I started hearing more and more stories from caregivers and thought, okay, I'm an occupational therapist. I know how to do the dressing, bathing, feeding, toileting. And it still was hard for me. So if it was hard for me, how are these people who have never done it or never considered
Right.
how to
Yeah,
do it,
that's
doing
tough.
it? And I thought, okay, so the book can't just be a memoir. It really needs to be helpful.
Mhm.
So it took me a I mean, I've been working on and off, but I would say a full 3 years of getting organized and really getting the structure down and
Mhm.
how I wanted to integrate everything together. So, because it does read like a story, also,
Okay.
to be fair. If you read it from cover to cover, even
Mhm.
though the tips are in there, I give some examples of what happened to me, but it reads like a story. So,
Okay. Okay. And
um,
so, did you enjoy have you always enjoyed writing? I'm assuming, is this your first book?
this is my first
Yeah.
book. Yes. No, I haven't always enjoyed writing. I've always been really intimidated by it. And as a clinician, you don't write anything really long. You write your
Uh-huh.
patient notes, and they're just really quickly written, and just so that you get the facts down. But I've always kept a journal, so I've always enjoyed writing like that.
Hmm.
And so I did enjoy the process though. I wanted to make sure it was as accurate as I could make it as far as the memoir part. So I refer to my journals a lot, and I audio and videotaped my mom a lot. And we took a lot of selfies, which are in the book.
Oh,
Um,
that's so
yeah, it
cool.
was fun. So she enjoyed that, and she liked when I would videotape her and things. So, and I was then able to capture her voice and her stilted, the way she spoke stiltedly. So, yeah, but I am continuing to write and now really enjoy writing. As I said, I just got off of being the coordinator for a big writers conference out in Montana here, and
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. How was that experience?
Oh my goodness, it was amazing. So, um, I'm gonna name drop for a minute, and you can edit this or whatever. But for our keynote, we had Shelley Reed, who just wrote "Go as a River," who is a debut novelist, and it sold 1 million books worldwide, and she was just brilliant. So I got to help her. But yeah, we had over 100 people there, which we try to limit it to 100, but we got a few more um, people who were interested. So we said, all right, and had 9 presenters, different authors of various genres, and it was great.
Oh,
It's fun
wow.
to be around other writers because so often when you're writing, you're isolated, and
Hmm.
um, so it was nice. And it I'm in Montana right now, and it was in the Flathead Valley, which is right by Glacier National Park. So it's beautiful out here. It's fall. So it was a beautiful setting. We had fabulous presenters, and it was a lot of fun. But I've been working on it for over a year, so it was
Oh,
fun to,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Nice.
it was fun to have it finally happen. And then
Yeah.
I took some of the presenters yesterday to Glacier National Park.
Oh,
So
fun.
yeah, so that's why I said we spent all day there hiking and things. So I did not get in until late last night.
Oh, man. That's so cool.
So
That's a
it
really fun
it
experience.
it was a fun experience. Yeah. So um,
Well, was there a favorite part of your book that felt especially meaningful or rewarding to write?
hmm, I'm trying to think. Obviously, the best parts for me were writing about my mom and
Mm.
me. Um, as much as the practical tips as far as how to carry out your responsibilities were fun because I was tapping into my professional experiences, my expertise, and I thought, okay, I know this stuff. Let's just write it. This is fun. And then the spiritual journey aspect, I really needed to pull and be honest of my faults and things that I need to work on. And I was inspired by one of the sisters who, at 103 years old, told me she's still working on hers. So I thought, well,
The work in progress.
yeah, it's a work in progress. Um, I'm not even close to 103, but she's still working on it. So that, that was fun to reflect on those conversations. But yeah, to just remember the times that I had with my mom, and also it was the here and now times in the skilled care facility, but she wasn't able to talk or communicate after a while. So then sharing the memories that I had, like one time just looking at her hands, and again, I don't know how these memories popped up, but she used to sew a lot of our clothes, and she was really good. And I always felt so pretty in the dresses that she made because they were so unique compared to my
Oh,
girlfriends and
cool.
things.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at her hands and remembering a blue and white polka dot dress that I thought was so cool that I wore for Easter with white tights and white patent leather shoes and twirling around in it, and the skirt would go out, and I was just, staring at her, and sometimes when she was sleeping you could see her old self, her
Mhm.
former self, I should say. And so
Mhm.
that was fun to just have that time to remember those things, because otherwise I think if I didn't take that time to even sit next to her while she was sleeping in the nursing home, I wouldn't have stopped to say, oh, gosh, let me think about the dresses my mom used to make me. I would have just been going on with my life, working and,
Mhm.
doing laundry and all the things. But
Mhm.
because I took that time,
Mhm.
and even though she couldn't speak or anything, she couldn't communicate and she was wheelchair bound by that point, I felt that when I was next to her, that she understood that someone who loved her was there. Like there was a calmness about her. And it wasn't just me. I saw it with my other siblings and our kids and things, that when a family member was near her, there was a calmness about her. And not that she got really agitated, but I just felt that
You
it
felt
was,
at peace, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah.
What has your family members and siblings thought about your book and
Well,
publishing
yeah.
it?
So they have been very supportive. Um, at first, some of my siblings, they purchased the book, but they said they couldn't read it because they started and it just was, when they started reading about our mom, it was heartbreaking for them.
Mm.
But I have to say, I got one of the best reviews from my brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, Carol, and she bought it for all of her adult children because she said someday they're going to need
You're
this.
gonna need this.
Yeah, but she's a nurse and she just thought that this was so helpful, is
Mhm.
the instructional part and how easy. It's very accessible. I tried to make it that way so that people could understand. If you're new to caregiving, you don't need to have a dictionary nearby also to understand these words. So, yeah, my siblings have been really supportive of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
And
tell you, so I was at a conference up in Calgary where I spoke with social workers who work with caregivers.
Mhm.
And one of the women was from Kenya, and she bought the book and she is said she was going to take it to Kenya to give to her sister who is caring for her mother there. She said, "This is going to be so helpful for my sister. Thank you for writing it." And
Mhm.
so I told my siblings, yeah, mom's story is going to be in Kenya. I mean, how cool is that?
So
So,
cool.
yeah. So we like that.
Yeah. Was there a difficult part of your writing process at all?
Well, difficult in the mechanics or difficult writing it
Um,
emotionally?
Both.
Okay. Well, emotionally, certainly talking about the time when my mom, after I told her on the phone, then the next day I went to her house
Mhm.
and we went out shopping and she was still just walking with a cane then and everything. She was really very, she was able to live on her own still. It was just the very beginning that she was having difficulty forming her words and things.
Mhm.
But she asked me if she did something to cause this. And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, to hear, of all the things from the night before that since she found out to the next day, that might have been what she was ruminating on.
Yeah, thinking about, yeah. Oh my
If
God.
there was something she could have done to prevent it, um,
Oh,
that was heartbreaking.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
and then to write it, I know, sorry, even to talk about it again.
yeah, I
It,
bet. Yeah, so that was hard to relive and
yeah,
get through. Yeah.
yeah. But then we had a very funny moment afterwards where she and I, just started laughing and about some things, and you can read about it in the book. And so it broke the tension and it was another great moment, a
Mhm.
great moment to share. And I was glad that she felt comfortable enough to ask me that because
Yeah, for sure.
um, I my siblings and I have talked about how we all filled a different need during
Mhm.
that time with her. And she talked to me about the disease and how she was feeling and things. And that was my role. And some of my other siblings were the role of just keeping her happy and and having
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And so I was happy that she felt comfortable asking that. If that was on her mind, I wanted her to get that out. And
Yeah.
I tried to reassure her because I did Google that and stuff the night before. I was looking at causes and again, 15 years ago, they didn't know as much about it. And so
Mhm.
I tried to reassure her that there was nothing she could have done.
Yeah.
So I think it set her mind at ease, but what a horrible burden to think if I had done something different, I
That
wouldn't be staring down this terminal illness, this
Mhm.
disease that's horrendous. Alzheimer's is a horrendous disease.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I can't believe I'm asking this now, but what was your mom's name?
Janet.
Janet.
Janet
Oh my
Cassidy.
gosh. I feel like Janet was just like so like wonderful. The amount of times you've said that she's like been able to like break the tension with like a laugh or something, I think that's
Yeah.
so, but that was really great to have those moments and remember her,
It,
by those moments.
you know what? It was, and I'm telling you, she went through this disease with such grace. It really was admirable to watch, and it definitely changed my life in thinking about who I am and who I want to be. And
Mhm.
it it was it was just a really powerful experience in my life. And that's why I wanted to share that experience and talk about how it can be so powerful for caregivers. It is exhausting.
Yeah.
I go to the happy place, but it's exhausting too. But
Yeah. Yeah.
especially you don't know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
With someone with Alzheimer's, the ending is going to be terrible because it's their death. And you
Mhm.
don't know how long. I mean, she suffered for 11 years. That was a long time from the time I told her on the phone that she had Alzheimer's until she passed away. It's 11 years. And during that time, I kept thinking, oh, I want this to. There were times when I wanted it to end, and then I'd say, oh, no, I don't want it to end, but I do want it to end. But yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
so yeah.
So, as we wrap up here, what do you hope readers take away from most from Caregiving Reimagined?
I hope they realize that they're not alone in this, that there are many, many millions of people along this same journey, and yet their journey is unique. What
Mhm.
they're going to learn about themselves and their family member is unique to them.
Mhm.
And to know that they will never regret spending all this time with this family member. They may, in moments, resent it, but they will never regret all the
Mhm.
time and effort they put into this.
Mhm. And what other like words of encouragement would you offer, someone that is beginning their caregiving journey?
Oh boy. I would just offer them, I would encourage them to take moments to pause.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be big moments. Just take moments to pause and really think about what their needs are and what
Mhm.
they want also. In those moments, if they take a moment to pause and think about what they're going to say and do, they'll feel better about what they said and did.
Mhm.
And to know that there is support out there. There are agencies and things who will support them and give them some suggestions. And please ask for help. I would
Mhm.
encourage them to ask for help. They don't have to do this alone.
Mhm. I will say that I'm just so blown away by your just perspective and keeping of perspective throughout this experience. Talking about your spirituality and, discovering more about yourself through this experience with your mother and, cherishing those small moments that you talked about by letting her, sit with the sister at the appointment and, holding her hand and remembering all these memories. I feel like this is a great lesson in itself to, keep perspective and find perspective during these experiences if you're a caregiver too.
Right. I was really grateful for being finding the gratitude in the moment. Like I knew in that moment when I was watching her with that handful of spit, I don't know that I would have done that. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know that I'd want somebody to spit.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want them to choke, but
Yeah.
you know, but I knew in that moment that it was special and that I was witnessing something, I was witnessing greatness, and I was fortunate to be in that spot in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't have been if I hadn't been a
Mm-hmm.
caregiver.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was grateful that I knew that in that moment. It wasn't just in hindsight. I wrote in my journal, oh my God, I can't believe, that I just witnessed this. And thank you for putting me in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything else, Dr. Bennett, that you would like to mention today, before we go?
Emma, you have asked really great questions. I appreciate
Mhm.
that. They were really thorough.
Sure.
Thank you for letting me talk on and on for so
Yeah,
long.
sure.
It's a topic that I really do want people to have a different idea about it than what is sort of the prevalent that, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. And I get why that's the idea because it is intimidating for sure. But I really do feel that with all of the caregivers coming together and supporting each other and things, we can make it a different experience. We can make it a really wonderful experience
Mm-hmm.
because so many people are going to be a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, taking the time and sharing your story. I'm sure a lot of people can relate, to this story and guide. And I know, someone knows someone who is
Right.
coming into a caregiving role for sure. So, I hope readers can relate to it and I hope they pick it up.
Well, thank you, Emma. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Of course. And to you who is listening, you can purchase Dr. Bennett's book at archwaypublishing.com through the online bookstore, as well as Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. And thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.